I know how this goes. Thank y'all for joining us this evening as we get this talking about black leadership, which is a great conversation. I'm surrounded by some brothers, and I'm kind of on Christy's tip when she says she really wants to hear from the brothers, and I do too. So I'm gonna enjoy sitting here with them, and I'm gonna be moving around. Y'all know how we do it. So we got Brother Barry, Brother Ryan, Brother Keon. Three black men. I'm gonna move a statue. Y'all know how I moves around. Three black men in the building. We're gonna talk about black leadership. My first question to y'all: what is black leadership? What is it? Is it a job description? Y'all got a job description? What's up? What's black leadership?
You put the black in front of it, but leadership is leadership.
Bring your mic up. Go ahead.
But it's the ability to, I guess, galvanize the people, motivate people, galvanize, motivate, and have a plan, some direction, and able to activate the people, in more ways than one. I think in more ways, a leader is someone who can lead themselves. And if people see fit to their liking, they gravitate to what that individual is doing or, participating in. So I think in essence, it's the ability to lead yourself. And, a good leader will gain followers, if you will. But leadership is that. Black leadership is the same thing with the black in front of it. But yeah, it's the ability to capture the people's imagination, if you will, galvanize the people, motivate the people, inspire to do on whatever front that is that we try to accomplish, whatever the task is at hand.
Right on. Anybody else? Black leadership.
Yeah. I think black leadership. A lot of what Keon said, that it's those who can create. Create a path for those to follow. That'll be courageous enough to blaze a trail that most aren't willing to walk. Kind of take that space that it's harder for a lot of people to kind of imagine stepping into, but doing it for a reason that's greater than themselves too. It has to be for a bigger cause than what that one individual is, and they have to understand that the decisions they make impact so many that are looking to them to lead and to follow behind, and to also put them in a better position. I think a good leader, also especially a black leader, has to know how to follow too. I know historically that's looked different. But I think we're at a point where we're realizing that model shifts a little bit. And I think it's always been a give and take to it, because I think other leaders in the past have also understood we have to work together and whatnot. But I think that somewhere within the dynamic of the attacks against our black leadership, that division became stronger and stronger. And I think we might have lost a little sight of that, or at least it got blurred in the process. So I think definitely got to be able to collaborate and build with others, and also know how to follow too. A leader is ultimately a servant to those that, that they're leading to that forefront of it.
Right on.
It's part of servitude, definitely servitude.
All right, Brother Barry, that's your mic. Black leadership, what it means. Trying to get some meanings in here. Wait, go up.
Yo.
Up, is it on? Up, there you go.
Yo.
No, go to the middle.
Yo. Oh, there we go. Technology, baby. I think what my brothers were saying in the response to it, I feel like they was right on point with a lot of the stuff. Talking about servants, talking about the service piece, talking about the following, talking about just standing in a direction that others will follow. But I honestly think that sometimes we're misled with leadership. I don't think that all people become leaders. Sometimes, we are born in it, but then sometimes, it just kind of the direction we travel. But sometimes leaders come from following a certain blueprint, or seeing something that needs to be changed in that direction of principle. Looking at the ideas of others and seeing that these ideas and these principles are being followed in that direction. But I also look at sometimes we are jaded in our leadership because there's certain leaders that we seem to follow, or we actually put the tag on that are leaders, to me are not always necessary leaders. And I feel like a lot of times that there's different, I think, practical ideas of what we want to see black leadership is, but I think sometimes there's a lot more soldiers, right, at times that even get the tag of leaders and they're not really a leader. I don't really myself believe that just because someone does a job or is in a position that they're necessarily a leader. Like what makes them be able to lead because they're in this position? I don't think that individuals that get titles, like, we have a lot of leadership that gets resonated because they're a reverend, right? They're a doctor, they're this, council person. But in a sense, I don't really believe that they're leaders if they don't have the action behind it. So we find ourselves in this kind of a whirlwind where we're putting so much emphasis on certain leadership and values and core of what it's supposed to be that we get derailed because a lot of what socially we've seen to be leaders in this new millennium is our entertainers. And I feel like they've kind of left us more astray, just as much as when we felt that only pastors and reverends, people in the church was our leaders, right? And I think that's what galvanized a lot of white people to believe that they can always have a stranglehold on black people, because where would they go to? They would go to the church, galvanize the vote, and of course a lot of black folks go to the church, right? And so right then and there, you can have a Republican or a Democrat that just knows. What did Hillary Clinton do? Hillary Clinton didn't go into all the neighborhoods. She decided to go to where? The churches. And then when you went to the church, that because I have this pastor who's been my leader for so many years, I believe that I'm making the right decision because I'm being led by my pastor. And I think that's kind of where the jagged edge comes from on what in terms is our leaders. And sometimes our leaders are more radical, but we kind of denounce them because they're not talking in the same signal, in the same language as other leadership. So we have to do that. Exactly.
Well, you know what?
That's my question. Who picks the leader?
Well, I think to what Barry's saying though too about how leaders have been typically defined, be it from the church space or whatever, right, or especially now our entertainers, they go to where black people gathered at, right? How do you hit a mass of folks with one message at one time? You go to a church, right? People come there every Sunday. You're going to get a certain amount of people that you're going to be able to see consistently and give them that message. Same thing with an entertainer, right? You're going to pick up and get that album every time he drops something, every time he drops a new freestyle or whatever it is, new song, you're going to follow that too. So they figure, okay, well, if people are tuning into you, we have their attention, you have their allegiance, if you will. So you're definitely the model of leadership versus understanding that in reality, we're black people, we're not just in one space. And so that's why they'll try to paint it to that, because it's like, okay, well, here's where the majority's at. And a lot of times there'll be popular culture or society that says, that's your leader. Well, this is who it is, because clearly, look how many people pay attention to them. Just because you're paying attention to them doesn't mean you lead me anywhere, bro.
Yeah. And to your question, like who picks the leader, I think leaders emerge. I really think leaders emerge. However, I think if you're out front and you're often seen a lot, people will pick that way. But in the most natural form, most natural sense of the way, leaders emerge. They're not necessarily chosen. And sometimes they handpicked, sometimes you look down from privilege or, people who we would call the gatekeepers, and they watching somebody they got their eye on, and then, they want to push somebody out to the forefront. But that's not necessarily, the right way of leadership. I really just truly believe leaders emerge.
And just going into this piece, as Brother Keon said, handpicked, merged. So when we talk about those two different things, once upon a time, that's what it was. There was merge, it was moments, conflict, it was in the front. You think about Nat Turner, Harriet Tubman, these leaders that was in these awkward positions, but they rose into leadership and they merged, right? But then as our counterparts got to seeing this, they started to do what? They started to pick and choose what is going to be our leadership. So now that's why we have entertainers now as the head, because they moved away from religious leaders, political leaders, and said, it's not really getting our base the way we need it. Let us now flip and say, these are the ordained leaders, and we have bought into that. So in reality, we have kind of done ourselves wrong, and I think now more in this millennium, we're kind of stretching it, but I think it went from the piece where it was leaders were just brought by the people and was just like in those moments. Then they were handpicked. Then we got away from it again, where leaders again emerged in the conflict. We talk about Black Panthers. You talk about MLK. Well, actually, he was kind of thrown in this upon You know what I'm saying? You got
That's
listen,
true.
that is a reality. I mean, I understand some people are going to probably take that to offense, but he was a chosen leader. And then you have a moment where we have, you know, Malcolm X, you know, you have all those different leaders and other leaders that were in pocket that we don't really talk about that often. Then you go back into the Obama effect, right? The Obama effect was, again, a leader that was chosen. And I know the masses want to believe that this Obama theory showed up to be our Jesus, but in reality, it was another component of selected.
A while back, they already knew it way before he got
Listen, in what was it, 2000, I forget what it was, I want to say 2005 or, 2005, I saw a Time magazine with Obama on it. I want to say 2005, 2004, one of those moments. Obama's face, and it said, our next president.
Yep, it was right around the DNC speech that he gave, because I remember seeing the thing.
This was before he announced everything.
Yeah, and it was crazy because I remember what you talked about too, because me and my pops talked about it, because I walked into the living room and they were watching it. I was like, oh man, they're about to pick him to be the next president. And I said it that way too. My dad said, what? I said, they're about to pick him to be the next president. I mean, you can't hear how he said. I'm like, it's not even about that. It's how they positioned him.
Yeah.
Look how they put him up. Look at the pedestal they put him on and the microphone they gave him. To what you're saying about that, it's tenors, right? We know what hip-hop originally started from, right?
Yes.
It's raw grittiness, and we understand where it's been driven away from because of what industry did to it, right? Power holders, gatekeepers, those with access and finance and all that or whatever, right? So now you control the narrative and the message, and again, you control the leader that you select.
Are black people capable of picking their own leaders?
That's kind of tricky. So black people, we optical people. We gonna pick what what we see, right? That goes to my original point when I said leaders emerge. But are we capable of picking our own? You have to be well informed. You have to really know what's going on. You have to have a grip on the temperature. You got to really know what's going on for you to pick a viable leader. In more ways than one. In this divided time that we in, we got 1 trillion million leaders. Nobody actually wants to follow the leader. Everybody want to be the leader. Can we pick our own? Let me think about that some more, man. I gotta think about that.
I mean, I think
Anybody
that
wanna grab that?
I think that we have, but it's all come with a cost.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it.
We'll pick good leaders.
In a sense of one of the most telling things about going to the African American Museum in D.C., the new one, was out of all the leadership that they had, out of all of it, and there was a lot missing, they didn't have Marcus Garvey.
That's crazy.
You know what I mean? And Garveyism has kind of, created a lot of the stuff that we're doing here right now currently in Sacramento, and has emerged so many different leaders and so many different campaigns. But they chose to say, really not that important. Let's put Malcolm X in this little glass. Since Oprah gave us enough money, we're going to have Oprah have a whole, Oprah has her own area, her own exhibit.
For a couple of months.
It is, but it's like, okay, why not do that for Marcus Garvey?
Yeah.
To start us off,
They'll never recognize Garvey here.
But that becomes a thing of where we have.
That's us.
But that becomes a thing where it is like, can we really choose? I think that us choosing the leaders that we choose, sometimes we want that leader to be exactly like us, think like us, feel like us, be like us, and that reality is not, because a lot of us, like for instance myself, I didn't call myself a leader. People started putting me in that frame. So now it's like, well, I hope y'all don't think that I'm finna act a certain way that y'all want me to act, because I got flaws. I'm coming in here, I'm not going to be Mr. Ty and say the right things. I'm probably going to do more things that you probably dislike and say more things that you don't like, and probably move in a different way compared to the other leadership. That's why it's been a strain on some individuals with my type of leadership style, because they're not used to it here in Sacramento. Other places, okay, we're used to this, we've seen this before. But here in Sacramento, it's like we're not used to it. So I think that's where it becomes a strain in that prince.
I agree, and I think I think that's something key about it too, is that when trying to select leadership, it's that framework that it has to look a certain way. Leadership's going to look different, especially if it's effective leadership, because in reality, again, you're trailblazing. The way you're going into a path, that sometimes, yes, you are following blueprints that have been laid before, but it's going to be a new territory that might not have been reached before. So how are we getting through that? How are we continue to push it along? And that's going to land differently for different people, right? There's going to be things that I say and that I'll do that people won't agree with, and I'm like, all right, whatever. But it's, again, that's why I think I go back to that piece about understanding that it's for more than what that one person's doing. It's a bigger purpose and a bigger cause, because to have the commitment to do some of the things that B does on a regular basis, people might think, oh, it's just selfish, but there's a whole lot more that he operates on that you have to get close to the man to understand what that principle is driving to. And a lot of it he's going to tell you flat out too, but to understand what that is and what keeps that fire going to go the way it is going to be different. Same thing with my brother Key. Same thing with you, sis. Like there's things that drive leadership that aren't going to be understood by the people who are taking that first glimpse at it. And I think that's where that part of, are we selecting the right leadership or how we go about it? And I think that what he's saying about being informed really matters, but at the reality of it, can you understand that the actions you're seeing are for something so far ahead possibly that
it might not register with you now.
Exactly.
And so to come back now and answer the question, because I said come back to it, I think black people can choose leadership. We can do anything anybody else could do. You know what I mean? In more ways than one. We're the originators to a lot of stuff. We've had great leadership in the past, and we know what happens with that. We know what happened with that. Again, like he just now spoke to Garvey. Garvey was a magnificent leader in more ways than one. But what happens is you get the systems who recognize, so the system that's in place, they would recognize real leadership when they see it. And those are the ones that you don't hear from, right? Those are the ones that they silence. Those are the ones they're gonna take out. Those are the ones who name won't get honorable mention, who won't end up in a Smithsonian or African American.
Who are they?
Dr. Seeley.
No, who are the days?
The system that's in place.
What's
So
the
we talking
system?
about we talking about like the United
White
States.
supremacy.
White supremacy.
There you
Straight
go.
up.
Call
Okay.
it what it is.
Okay, well you look at that right now, because we've had, like I said, we've had the Garveys, we've had the Seabees, we've had the Dr. Clarks and those teachers, and those in those ways they were leaders as well. You know what I mean? But a lot of people, you'd be surprised, don't know none of those names or who those people are.
You know what? And I would love to agree with my brothers, but I have to disagree with my brothers on this piece, because yes, in tune we can, right? But I feel, just from what you guys said with white supremacy, we have been so beaten down and so I feel we're inferior to the point where we are waiting for white people to conduct to us who is our actual leaders, that I think that until we get the white approval, right? Because most of the times when we look at it, until white people put MLK on a pedestal, right? What do we celebrate every year? MLK. We're going to go march for him in January, right? But then to turn around, niggas are sitting there saying, okay, well, Malcolm X, white people ain't endorsing Malcolm X. We don't celebrate Malcolm X the way we should be celebrating MLK. So I sometimes believe that we are always waiting to see, well, what are they going to do? Well, how are they feeling about it, right? So if a whole bunch of white people said Marcus Garvey was one of the greatest black leaders ever, I think more people are like, you goddamn right. You know what I'm saying? Because we really walk over and pretend that Garveyism didn't even exist. And now for those who know like us.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So part of that is not about them telling you who. Part of that is about them omitting, and so they give us all the information we have for the most part. We look at their media, we look at their books, we look at all of that. When you have people like Garvey left out of the things that they're teaching you, it's not necessarily them choosing it for you, but they choose it for you. But you get the leftovers, because there's ones who did do things throughout history that you just never hear about.
I'm gonna go into one second, so just because I want to go to what they're saying too. Is it's not a control mechanism, right? What he literally is saying, that where we're waiting for that white approval, right? Well, where does that come from? Slavery. You're waiting for, am I going to get killed for making this decision? Right? If I'm making too much noise, like there's so much that comes from that, and I get pissed off with the whole conversation about white supremacy, honestly, because I'm like, why do we still talk about them? Fuck them, excuse me, but fuck them. To be honest, I'm more focused on how we build this shit that I don't even want to press there. If we got to deal with that, we got to deal with that when it comes. But honestly, I'm so focused in black and what my intentions are. Yeah, I know white people, I know you don't like this shit. I know you really don't like how we gonna come with it. But it's cool, no problem. Yeah, cool, okay, great. Anyways, bro, what do you need to make sure this builds, or how do we get that popping? What support do you need over here? That being the focus of it, and that moving it, removes so much of what agency they have over us. You know what I'm saying? Like, and we keep giving them agency by allowing that to be the deterrent. True enough, we know what it is. Okay, let's start healing it. Let's start working through that, right? Because we know it's culture and generational trauma and oppression that we're still dealing with that keeps us in that mentality of where that'll continue to happen. I want us to focus on how do we change that mentality? How do we change that mindset in our folks?
So let me say this, and y'all can go next. I think the part that we miss out, hit your mic like that. It be on.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Okay, so I think the part that we leave out of here, I think that when we keep trying to make black people one people, we miss everything. Some of us are arch enemies here. And I'm so okay with that. The arch enemy is not just white people. So my thing is, when I hear about the system, black people help to control that system. They're complicit in all of this. And I know it's hard for some of us. So I was with a Jewish friend this morning doing my walk, and they were telling me they just had the Jewish New Year. And so part of what they do at the Jew Year, they do all of these prayers. But one prayer they do for the traitor. And it's to pray that they fail. Now, black people, a traitor means somebody that's Jewish that's coming against the Jewish people. We're the only people, who feel like when black people do something, they brainwash. We come up with all of these ways of saying they didn't mean it. You know what I mean? Instead of saying, no, you're working for the other side, that's who you're working for. And I think that's because we're different people. We're different tribes. We're different, I don't say tribes, I'm not trying to get, I'm just saying in terms of some of us are looking for freedom. If you get in the way of my freedom and you black, off with your head. I can't be trying to rehabilitate. That ain't my lane. I'm gonna be honest with you. But when we start talking like in this, like we're all one group, I think we miss because my question with the leadership is some people, their job is to lead you to slaughter. Some people's job is to lead you to freedom. And some people's job is to lead you to more confusion or to put blame on other people instead of saying, I know that this is a trap, because I always wonder how our ancestors survived when they knew there was hella traps. How did Harriet Tubman make 19 damn trips and she ain't even been in the United States? You understand? 19 times. So she couldn't wait to say, oh, the white man gonna catch me. That's just a chance she had to take because freedom meant that much. So when we're talking about leadership, are there different styles of leadership? Are there some people whose job it is to uphold this white supremacy and they don't care nothing about you? Do we have those leaders that say, y'all, it's going to be rough, we may eat beans and rice, but we're going to build what we got to do, we're going to sacrifice, we're going to buy some property? Like, what are we really talking about here, black folks? Help me out with black leadership.
I mean, you don't be sorry with what you said. And I think some of our leadership, and that's why we're having these discussions, is to remain stagnant, for us to remain in the status quo. When you constantly look at the leadership, and this is the current leadership of today, we look at innovative and movers and leadership that was okay with separating us from them. And that's not a bad thing. It's just a sense of ownership is one of the most beautiful things to have in life, right? To be able to say, I have a little Africa here, right? To be able to say that here is a flourishing black community, right? Because I don't see any other group apologizing for their Asianness, for their Latino-ness, for their Cubanness, for their Indianness, except for us. We're the only ones that always apologize. Should we
make space for
exactly? Should we put the RBG flag out? Who are we gonna offend? And the one thing about the LBGQ that I love about them, because they have a whole group that's full of different people and different nationalities in their one banner, and all they represent is that flag. So if you gay, you gay. It don't matter really what color, even though deeper it does really naturally affect. It is still that. Yeah, they definitely got the issues. But when it's time for them to get done with stuff, they get it done. Because it's not a black person starting to argue with a white person under the flag movement. They just go on the move. With us, that becomes a bigger issue. And I think that's why when we're looking at the scope and the lens of leadership, you have older folks not wanting to let go, younger folks, not like us because we're still young, but the younger folks really feeling like we're going to do it better than y'all and we don't need to hear guidance. And one of the things that I can point at in particularly was just this past few weeks, there was a protest and youth led. And this is when leadership comes in. Facts. Me and Queen, Miss Pryor, we came in, and Brother Crandall, we all came in, and what we were was the advisors. And when one of the young leaders called me up as the third day was about to happen, and I helped him, create this kind of blueprint on what this third day was going to look like, and what would maybe happen in the fourth day if it was necessary. they understood, and this is what I loved about this youth group. They understood that they needed to do more because the volume of pressure wasn't high enough for the faculty to believe that they meant business, right? So he made sure he looked at and found some leaders in the community, called me up personally and said, hey, we really would love your assistance. And I asked him, what do you want me to do?
Real talk.
What position do you want me to play? And I asked him, this is what I can do. Do you want me to do this? He said, yes, because we need them to know that we mean business. And I promise you on that 4th day, now those kids got their resolution. They feel empowered. But it was up for us adults to understand, to go ahead and play our role. And what I found out in that experience, those that came before us that was trying to push the issue but wasn't able to do the things that some of us that came into leadership on the protest side were able to do, when it was time to sit down and have the conversation, everybody wanted to be a part of the conversation. But it's like, this is where we have to fall back. If the young people are saying, hey, these are the people that we want in the room, we got to respect that. And I think that with leadership, what happens is sometimes we feel that we're in place because we have a title of what? An elder. We have a title of a pastor, and we have allowed white people to dictate to us what is leadership, so it curbs our visual on what leaders are supposed to be and how they are supposed to be. And when you know it, black leaders have always been in a revolutionary stance and radical. And that's what we have to maintain and continue to be. That's the only way we have change. It has to be radical change because it's a very much radical moment.
Somebody gonna say something? So with that being said, Barry, what do we do with the black men and women who are leaders who are not radical, but they stand up and try to act like, I'm speaking for Barry. I can speak for all of us when I say, when none of us are mad at white people. You'd be like, well, wait a minute. No, because some of us do that. We want to make sure when I hear this term of color, it burns me up. Yeah. Because all the rest of the colors, they got their towns. They got banks. They got their own homes. They have whole communities. How we get
with
to
their
be
nation in front of whatever it is. If it's a Latino grocery store, it says the Latino grocery store.
Mio Rancho.
I seen a car lot the other day. I want to say it was on Fulton. And I forgot what it was, but it more or less said the Mexican car, you know what I mean? And you'll never see, like I said, things with that, a black bank. It just says black bank or black grocery store, African owned. So that thing about us, not being able to name ourselves for ourselves, that's what you're talking about right now. Those things come into position, into play.
What do we do with people who are against us being radical, being liberated? What do we do with those? But how do we bust them out? Like, what do we do?
I honestly think it's something to where it goes back to the biggest thing that I think all this comes into is ownership, right? I own my voice. You know what I'm saying? If somebody's not speaking on behalf of me, yo, I appreciate you, you know what I'm saying? I appreciate you trying to stand into that position or whatnot, but you don't speak for me, and we ain't the same on that. You know what I'm saying? And it's cool that you feel that way and that's where you're at, but I'm in a different space right now. The ones I'm rocking with, we moving a little different right now. And here's what our conversation is. And to make sure that we give those voices to those people who want to say, who need to say something, but understanding that there's going to be realities that some people can't connect with because you just ain't cut from that. So how are you going to try to speak from that if you don't have any reality, any baseline with that? And for those who will say, I'll speak for you, like, oh, look, you need to check in because you can't speak for something you don't know. I'll be damned if somebody says they speak for me and they don't know me thoroughly.
We drown them out, weed them out, shut them down, let them know their time is expired. You know what I mean? Because you do it, that's what it is. You can't hold on to it forever. There's babies coming up on you, there's more qualified people coming up on you who understand the ways of the day. You know what I mean? Things are not the same today in 2018 as it was in 1959.
Get out the way.
You get out the way. You got to drown them out, shut them out, block them out. You know what I mean?
I think that in a personal sense, for what I try to do is, because I tried the route of, getting wisdom from elders and folks that was doing the type of work that I was doing as I was coming to change my life. And, I like to give a shout out to my nephew who would be 28, the young man, Ray, who was the one that created the logo, Voice of the Youth, inspired, so nephew, we love you. It was to be his birthday today. So it's always something that's why I've never changed the Voice of the Youth logo as many people and said, you should change it and nah, because he created that. That was like a gift, you know what I mean, from an angel. But as I went into it and stepped into it, I saw that many leaders, one, I guess, and it was funny because I never knew exactly what I was doing, so it wasn't that I had this stance. I just was a person that was, very passionate, and I wanted to learn, but most didn't want to teach, right? So I felt that reality sinking fast, and when leaders closed doors and basically told me in my face in ways where I didn't think was leader, right? Like, if you want your own, get your own. That let me know that this way that they doing it, I could take pieces, but I have to own whatever way and whatever style that I'm leading for myself, right? And for those who will follow it, they're gonna follow it. And if they're not following, I guess that I'm not a leader, right? So, and my thing was, you gotta constantly show what you're doing actually works, right? What you're navigating, what you're bringing to the people actually makes sense. You have to step out and be encouraged by doing things off the the same commercial lens or the same IDI, switch it up a lot on them and do things outside of the box. Do everything that they say you shouldn't do or couldn't do and make it effective. So once you start doing effective things and you're doing it in a way that is very radical, I think then now the people are now paying more attention. Because there's been a lot of us that's been sitting here saying the same thing for years, and people are now catching up to it, right? But when you look at the texture of some of the new leadership, and we're just talking here in Sacramento, right, that in 2014, Negroes wasn't even talking about black power movements here. But now current leadership are talking about what? Black power movements here.
And it's a shame because they the same ones, man, they was alive when black power was first kicked off.
But that's my point.
Right,
they were part of killing it.
Yeah.
But we don't even know if they're part of killing it because they could have been here for it. But I think as you get older, you get more comfortable in your position.
Get docile and
right. I fought before. You know what I mean?
But that's true. But a lot of us was complicit.
Yes.
And making us say of color.
Yes.
Making us blend into people.
Yes.
Saying stop saying black and you alienating white people.
Yes.
The ones who wasn't saying that is dead. The ones who's not saying that is dead.
Yeah,
in
but
jail
now,
right now.
now they got to switch over because now
it's coming
the black
back.
every 20 years black power comes
Yeah.
back in style.
Yeah.
And
what we've just done is that a lot of us, we've made it popular, we've made it trendy, we've created a different kind of culture, a sense of belonging, and unapologetically, we've moved in a position in a way to where when you see me, regardless of what you say, Barry's consistent. You know what I'm saying? You already know what it is. And then on top of that, I'm battle tested. So I just don't show up and come up right when the camera's on. And the fact that some people get upset because they see me so much, it's because I've been consistent since 2013, being in the public eye, talking about this thing. And you got to remember, this is before no one even cared here in the city. A lot of people are like, this is not our problem. Racism isn't here in Sacramento. We're good. We're diverse.
I got mine.
And I got mine. So once you do, and then I think one of the main things as well is when you bring out and you do this different kind of leadership, you start, when you get a bag or you start putting people on, right? You start spreading out the wealth and you start creating other leaders from your core. I think that's when we start able to weed out some of those leaders that are stagnant and are staying still.
And I think that's another key back to our first question about leadership. That's a key component that I don't think is talked about enough.
And to create other leaders.
Creating other leaders, man. You gotta create other
and
leaders.
And the style of your tradition, because this country could not exist if they didn't create other leaders. We couldn't have middle class Negroes if they hadn't created other middle class Negroes to carry out the leadership. I think maybe when you talk about the style, I like that you talked about your style. Because we've always had middle class black folks.
Yeah.
Even right up out of slavery, we had black folks who considered to be buffer race, or we okay with being in the cabinet or wherever the hell you was. We've always done that. I think when it comes to the radicalization or being African and that identity of being cold black, that's where we haven't always seen leadership be able to live enough to guide that person through the leadership. We never have guides that
That's the style they don't like. Right? That's the style that they don't like. The white supremacists. That's the style they don't like. We had Khaled, man. One of the most last beautiful leaders we had was Khalid Muhammad. I was listening to Khalid this morning and yesterday morning.
Fire.
You know what I mean? And those styles, right? We had the Garveys, you know. We had Malcolm X, you know what I mean? And Malcolm X, he rose up because X was X in that time, you know what I mean? He just had it. He just had the swag.
I also think he was before his time.
He was well before his time.
Even before the Negroes who helped bring him into existence.
Even these names that I just named, if you pay attention,
they outgrow their spaces.
but they definitely outgrow that. But still, at the same token, those are the ones who still have the same blueprint. If you follow those blueprints, that's what we on today, right? That's the lasting blueprint that'll last from day one. Liberation, identity, knowledge of self, and those things. Those are the style of leadership that me personally that I've adhered to. But that will never change. Like, that's the blueprint that will never ever change. And until we get back to those styles, those teachings, you'll continue to see the revolving door of us running and running.
So I will say this, Keon. I think some of the difference with the Khalid, because I love Khalid, and I personally. So I also think they seem more attainable.
They wasn't so far. They were with the people.
Yeah, they were
you can
really.
Find
They
them
weren't
with the
like.
people.
Yeah, like I've been on the subway in New York City with Khalid Muhammad like midnight. You know what I'm saying? So
he's not no bulletproof.
yeah,
he
ain't no
limo
punk.
and-
I'm gonna tell you that straight up. So I feel like sometimes it feels like there was more things backing them up, like Sister Soldier or Public Enemy or all of that music that made them. It made you feel good about rocking with him. Like, it made you feel good to stand up as a man. I love when the man tried to attack Javon at the store, and that brother came. Did y'all see the video?
Yeah,
The brother came from out of nowhere, did like that would be, or the woman in the store that was pregnant, or the parking lot, and the white woman, and then that brother came and showed
and that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
And you know, when you think about Brother Khalid, it's just like, I think in those moments when you think about our leadership back then to now, we really knew it was us against them. You know, there was no shadow of a doubt. So you embrace to stand by that kind of leadership, right? Because you didn't see that in principle. You read about some of the stuff.
Yeah.
I think it was profound when we talk about just leadership. We just think about how the lens of white approval, what white people say, is something that we'll accept you to kind of participate in. Goes to two movies that just recently came out. One was Nat Turner, the bio, and then the other was a Black Klansman by Spike Lee, right? There was more black people that I know saw the Spike Lee joint, right? And they want to make you feel like, you know, this black guy came through and he, you know, infiltrated into, you know what I'm saying, the Ku Klux Klan. But here it is, Nat Turner. And remember, I saw the movie, saw it twice, and I wish there was more killing scenes, but there really wasn't. But the basis of it was he was knocking down white heads. And you had more Negroes debating about how the bio wasn't specific to the history lens when we had multiple movies that wasn't specific to the history lens, but we've been okay with actually going to it, celebrating. I mean, for God's sake, they made us believe there was such a thing called Wakanda. Understand me? But you had the Black Klansman, a movie that in history and bio wasn't close to what it really was. You had more black people celebrating that than a movie where it shows us taking out our oppressor in a lens, in a way where the only thing, when we were fighting against the oppressed system of school with our young kids, the next level advocates, I said to them, you fight power with power. And when we try to demonstrate like this leadership, we have to be able to be okay with first not being loved by the oppressor and being okay with going against the grain of the oppressor. And so I think those are kind of ways that we get tricked often.
And that part of not being okay with not being loved with the oppressor starts with something we talk about often. Do you love yourself? Do you love yourself? Because guess what? If I love me, I don't give a fuck what they think about. Sorry, I don't. Great. Yeah, cool. 10 out of the end of it, too. About, gosh dang, I'm trying to keep the point.
The Black Klansman?
Black Klansman piece, but,
y'all know who he was, though? Do y'all know why I'm not going to go see the movie? I'm probably going to get a bootleg. I love Denzel, son. I wanted to put that on record. Cause I love Denzel. But do you know why I don't want to see that film?
What's that?
So you know that same dude they said basically helped to infiltrate all the movements we just talked about here.
So he's
The
just
Black
infiltrated.
Panther.
He didn't just infiltrate. He just infiltrate organizations.
Yes.
Period.
Yeah.
But
Now,
ones that
nothing
meant
can
something
get-
to us.
Yeah.
The Panthers, the
Yeah.
Nation of Islam.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like
Yeah.
that was
his
part
role.
of, because they were all at the end in those time periods were flooded with infiltrators, but he was one of them.
Yeah.
So how does Spike Lee again work on something that's a part of our
Highlighting that
narrative?
man and that man's name.
I'm so sick of this
You know what?
nigga.
And it was funny because he got a lot of blowback on from Chirac and how foul he did that city. But I got my point back.
Okay.
What I was gonna say is the point of what you said about being seen, right? We're talking about that radical leadership, that strong leadership that's actually changing. We know that through history they've been taken out, assassinated, killed, drugged, everything that can take those strong, that's actually shifting the mentalities and whatnot and pushing people to go in a whole different direction. You know what I'm saying? They've been taken out every single time. So what happens? If they're taking out younger and younger, you're getting a generation that's not getting to see that, that's not getting to believe in that. One of the things that I also think that was powerful about the youth that we seen at Tech High and what they did, they were modeling what they've been seeing. They leaned into the leadership who's doing it, and also leadership followed, like I said, that part of it. But they were modeling what they've been seeing and actually pushed it to another degree. Everything they asked for, if I'm correct, brother, tell me if I'm wrong, they got their ask, correct?
Yeah.
And this is the thing I think that's so important about when we talk about even the historical piece and why it should look different every 20 years and every something like that, because you should be learning from what happened before. We should be pushing a harder line on black, period, because what you talk about, the buffer race, right? That middle class that ain't do nothing. It's like, oh, you got access. You could have did a whole lot.
Well,
you
they
could have taught, but they
reap the
didn't.
benefits of what you kicked in, though.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get it twisted.
No, they reap the benefits.
The person who gets to
Generation
kick
that
it in
follows.
is not the person who gets the benefits most of the time. Like, that's just be honest.
That's the
So I
sacrificial part of
agree.
it.
I
That's the
agree.
sacrificial part of it, because to be honest, the work I'm trying to do right now, I don't expect to see the fruits right now. That's a bonus if it does. I'm hoping that it's hitting the next 50 years. Change, and again, I want it to see right now, don't get me wrong, but my expectation is for it to be completely different in 50 years.
So I'm going to keep us on task, but this is something that really just dawns on me. It feels like somewhere along the line, black folks have lost their right to be human beings. And I'm gonna tell you where I remember once watching The Purge. We was on a road trip. We went to go see The Purge.
Which one?
Election year. The election year.
Like
So they were walking around killing everybody. You know The Purge. You get one day to kill everybody. However, when it came to the black folks killing the racist white man, they were asked. Did you see that one? To like, don't kill him. You'll be just as worse as him. It's Purge night. We're supposed to kill people. You mean to tell me the person who's been racist
They
and
wrote that
lynching
into
me?
the script.
That was in
Yep.
there.
Now, you-
I was
that's
so
part of the
loud. I had to
programming.
visit Detroit. I had to get up and walk out because I was so loud. I
Now you
was
see
like,
how
what
slick that was to the.
But
to
the point is,
you caught that.
because it almost makes you feel like, see, they got us duped in the mind trick that somehow we're more human than they are. But yet we have to follow all the guidelines, but they don't.
Yeah.
I didn't even want to watch the movie, I ain't gonna lie to you.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I haven't
When
seen
Oh,
I
it.
seen
that
it, yes, I
killed
was like,
me.
I can't
That's
give
old.
it my energy.
The election year, just what I told you about Saturday. We really have to think about killing this man, this white man, this racist white man. But it's Purge night.
But again, I think Malcolm X kind of said something in the sense of like, black people's leaders, are like entertainers, right? And when you look at other leaderships, you won't have them be entertainers. You know what I mean? You won't see white people talking about their leadership is Brad Pitt. You know what I mean? You're not gonna have that.
No.
So that's kind of like the funnier thing. And even going back to what I said, we've had different kind of leadership, but in a sense of it all, throughout history, we've always had the slice of entertainment being the focal point because that's what they show us, right? And when you think about leadership, the way that they've kind of played this mind game with us is, remember when we were talking about movies and going to the fictional aspect, how it played with our mind. We don't see black leadership as superheroes the way we see white leadership. I say that because remember when we was growing up, right? 80s, early 90s. Who do we see? Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones.
Michael Knight.
Like a Knight Rider, right? Sylvester Stallone. I mean, he had a few roles. He was Rocky 1 minute. He was Rambo. I mean, you had your boy Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
He was Conan. You had,
Terminator.
But then, want to say even to that, right? Because we talk about leadership too, and then we have fictitious and fictional leadership. When Superfly came out, Superfly wasn't real, but he was everybody's leader. You see everybody turn into pimps, and you see everything happen. So, right? So that again, that comes to like Hollywood.
Exactly.
It's like you said, even in The Purge, how that one scene where it's like, let's not kill him. So you see again how white supremacy and Hollywood becomes our leaders.
Exactly. So in the sense of that, so where you looking at the black exploitation movies, pimps, gangsters, hustlers, oh yeah, that's going to be our leaders. So then when we flip into the 80s, when we're in the neighborhoods and the drug game came into, we gravitated to what we knew. The leaders were the drug dealers. I mean, that's what they was. That's what was promoted. So in a sense of, as if I'm a white kid, and even if I'm a black kid, I'm looking at all of this. Mel Gibson, he's Lethal Weapon, but he's a little bit of a radical, but wow, look how he goes. I'm thinking the only superheroes and the only person that lead, because in every single thing that we said of these movies, those people were leading. It wasn't a black person, and in that role, they were leading what? As you said, King, roles. They were lead roles. So if I am, as a young boy, watching, how am I going to even define leadership if I'm looking at a Malcolm X and I'm saying, well, what is this? They're not saying nothing about him. Look at what Harrison Ford did. He not only was Indiana Jones, but he also was Han Solo. Get what I'm talking about? Look at Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. Ooh, he led against the Jedis. So we're programmed by the media to show what we are supposed to be thinking as leadership.
How do we break that?
Keep that right there. So even before you say that, right? So then we look at two forms of leadership. So getting to your original question, can black people choose leadership, right? So then we look at the point how our leaders come from, again, like you said, who Hollywood would give you, and then you do have leaders who emerge. But then the light that they put on their leaders would actually shine a way brighter light than the leaders that do emerge.
But that ain't even their leaders though. That's why we also had during that time, we had the dude who was the head of the Senate. What's his name? Heavyset white dude, gray hair. I can see his face. So there's see, what I'm trying to say is, see, we just talked about something that you can visually see. But there are communities of black folks who have their own leaders who is not your leader. They want you to buy into that because they son work at the prison and he can get all the overtime he need if you just keep committing crimes and believe Superfly is your leader and want to blame white people. So go on and commit that crime against your own. Go to prison. I get all the overtime I need. Put my kid through college. Buy a couple of houses.
But you know what's the trip too about that visual piece too, because even what Barry's speaking about, where you didn't see those leading roles and where you did see black people in leading roles, you've seen one or two. So where you talk about this mentality of what does leadership look like, it having to be one or two. Nah, man, it's going to look different. You can have a multitude of leaders. Why? Because we're a multitude of people. You know what I'm saying? It blows my mind because one of the things that's lost about when you talk about the drug game, right? Because let's be honest, Mexican cartels are still around. Italian mob is still around. You know what I'm saying? You can get to Asian camps still around, right?
They're now in the politics.
But please, tell me, who was the black crime conglomerate that's still around?
Wow.
Why do you think that is? Here's the thing about it. When you think about a drug dealer, right? Let's call it the kingpins, because New York had tons of them, right? Cali had them too. Oakland, Chicago, down to LA, the whole nine, right? Here's the reality about it, right? These are men who typically were viewed not to have education because they dropped out early, right? They went to the street side of it. They figured out how to make. Say it again, please. Say it loud.
They could be on. They had a great mind. They had the wrong product, but they had a great mind.
And that's my point. They took those minds and put them in the shoe where you get minimal contact, right? Because guess what? They can teach the next in line how to create millions off of raw material.
I agree with that. But I also know the difference between us and all those other cartels is that they have a little bit more loyalty than we got. Because when you look at all of those drug gangs, most people got sold out by their own people.
Absolutely.
Let's look at Mr. Untouchable. Who goes on Time, New York Magazine, and say, I'm untouchable to the universe? I'm just going to have to reach out and touch you, young man. Or even in turmoil with his brothers, they had a code. They lived by some of the Muslim codes. They were 5%ers or whatever. They broke that. You know, so I'm just saying, like, other groups don't have that because in the Asian game, they will cut your finger off.
And
your family.
look, and I'm not
saying you should do that. I'm just saying that's a historical thing with them.
Absolutely, and I'm
They
not
all the way
uplifting
back
it
to
in the
China.
sense of the positive, but I'm saying that when you look at the changes, the same thing I'm talking about the radical leaders, right? When you look at the changes, the ones that really push something that goes beyond what that structured white supremacy controls, it's taken out every single time, and it's taken out in different
Well, you
ways.
keep trying, damn it.
Absolutely, we have
But
to.
I agree. I'm just
But
saying
yeah.
we just gotta keep
Absolutely.
trying because I feel like, and the only reason why I'm not harping on they're gonna take us out, they taking you out anyway. Like,
Yeah, it's not me harping on it.
I mean, our crime with each other
Die
is
on
so
your feet.
ridiculously high. I
Die on your
mean,
feet.
Well, and what I'm saying that for is because we have to be more bold and more voices stepping up. Because guess what? When you have that one that you can target, it's easier to kind of pinpoint, right?
You know,
but when you can't pinpoint who that one is, but you still.
we only got 10% of the people. Some people say
So
less
they
than
say.
that, controlling everybody. So big numbers don't mean nothing when you're building something. The controlling or providing the options, at least make you think it's an option to help me to keep this building on. Some of us are really fighting to be middle class. Some of us are really fighting to be able to go to college and to do all of those. Some of us are fighting to be inclusion.
Yeah.
We are fighting for the illusion of inclusion.
Illusion of inclusion.
And if you think about when you talk about black leadership, one of the most focal points about a lot of things that we've pinpointed, what opportunities are they given? What opportunities are they given, and what opportunities are they creating? You know what I'm saying? I mean, when we talk about Queen, how she went down to the East Bay and created something, a few things, and then now you have something that you created that you can employ, right? So those, in a sense, are leaders. But what are leaders, for the most part of it, we have the pastors, the reverends, we have the politicians, and a lot of these folks have not created what? Opportunities. And it got to be seen for what it is. When we had Brother David over here, Urban League, and the reason why I had to sit there and kind of put him on blast on a level of, well, you were there with KJ, and you niggas was having all these meetings. Like, it should have been a mandated thing to where before you whitewash Oak Park, we have to at least, whether the black businesses that are here are getting help to be revitalized, right? You know what I'm saying? Be able to get a whole remake, right, or a makeover, or we are going to make sure that we are intentionally putting at least 6 black businesses in here, so this neighborhood could not get the sense of culture ripped out of it. Brothers and sisters just looked at it as, well, it's not that big of a deal, and that becomes a problem.
I want to live next door to white people because I think they're going to bring me better service.
Because black people are more comfortable with living with white people at this particular time. And that becomes the same things that Brother Keon was talking about. All of the great leadership that I was able to be tutored by and nurtured by were people that were dead. You know what I mean? People that were dead that I had to go on YouTube, find books, read in the library, find out, like, why did they never talk to me about with Marcus Garvey, and research? Because the blueprints of the past are still the black blueprints of today.
So can we will we be able to, how can we obtain and sustain a black community in this present time? I'm talking about Black Wall Street, great, I know we did all that. I'm talking about what can we do right now?
It starts with separating ourselves as much as we can, right? I think it starts with a separation in your mind, and understanding that we all we got. It starts with separating yourself in your mind, separating yourself. Because, again, segregation was one of the worst things that happened to us, period, point blank. We thought it was a good thing at the time. We see this probably been one of the worst things.
You mean integration?
Integration, pardon me. Integration was, we thought it was the best thing at the time.
We thought we was going to get equality.
Yeah, but
That's
segregation was actually the worst thing. But I think we need to go back to that thinking. I think it starts there because, as we look back, we can see through segregation, the way that we were flourishing. We didn't recognize it back then.
So you feel segregation was better than integration?
Segregation?
Yeah, you say segregation
Segregation is way better than integration.
Yeah, that's
because you asking how do we get back to it, and it starts with that, at least that mind frame.
But how do we do that, Keon?
Honestly, so how we do it?
So
how we do it? It looks like just what we're talking about. How you creating opportunities and leaning into those opportunities with one another, right?
Building on the babies.
Exactly. Literally. Again, what do we? If you got a house, I got somebody who knows their damn books to no end and has 2 or 3 babies that they gotta stay home and spend time with, but they love teaching, they love spending time with kids, and I need you to watch my kids or help me. educate my kids. Well, why am I not making sure that I'm putting some money in your pocket for the time that you're spending with our babies, and making sure that you got enough food in that house to feed these babies and whatnot, and make sure this house is set up to where you can actually teach these kids a learning environment, where we're actually now creating a school for these kids outside of what the public structures and all these other systems that are in place are, but we're actually teaching our own. And then making sure that when money comes in to say, okay, what are we doing for education? Well, Sis Tammy over here, she's actually been teaching kids through this neighborhood for the past 20 years. We need to make sure that her house actually becomes a school itself. Let's go ahead and take this money from the people coming in, so they want to own this business. Well, look, if you want to bring a business to this community, we need you to pour into this community part of the school right here. Where are we doing community group builds? And again, it can be different communities. I'm not saying all black, all everything. I mean, don't get me wrong. It is all black, but all black can be in its different segments of black. I want a little Africa in West Sacramento. I want a little Africa in South Sacramento. I want a little Africa in North Sacramento. I want it to be so much of a thing that we understand that I don't have to look for the next person to solve my problem. I can look to my brother and my sister that's already here, and we can create that right now.
I want brothers, go back to the segregation piece. I want you to break that down a little bit more.
So again, so what we said was identifying what we do have. Right? You said, how do we build it? Identifying what we do have right now, and push that. You know, but what you're saying about the segregation.
Yeah, I want you to. I think you was in you're getting in there deeper. Yeah. Just kind of break it down a little bit more for the people when you're breaking it down with the whole segregation piece.
Well, with segregation at that time, you know, for the short history lesson, we were forced to do business amongst ourselves, right? We were forced because we couldn't go in a whites only store. We had to make the little black store. You know, we couldn't go in a white barbershop. We had to make. So we had more of our own because we was a forced state of mind. I think getting back to that, realizing that though it make the illusion may look like we integrated and we got that, it's still the same way. We don't have our own. We look at the failing education system and the school rates and the suspending and those things like that. That's because we still in a shit. We are still in a shit. It starts with the idea of separation. If you don't want to get full-fledged segregation right now, that's cool. I get it because we came a long way. Whatever. You got some white friends. I got some white loved ones. You know what I mean? But we get back to the separation mind frame. Get back to the separation mind frame, and I think it really starts with again, identifying what we do have right now, supporting those models, and letting the babies see it. I don't think through adults and you know, just the way the world is ran right now, it takes the babies to see for at least 10 years straight for them to be burdens to their souls and then to understand that we can have our own. So I think it really starts with, again, identifying what we have, building where we are, supporting those things that we do have in place, and allowing the youth to see that, because it's going to be through the babies. It's not going to be through no adults and none of that shit. That's not the way.
So when he's saying segregation, one of the key words that I would take out is support. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to support those vessels, those ideas, those thoughts, those things that are working. Right. And I think what we end up doing, just because the idea looks always better than the actual process, we tend to support things that are not working, right? Because the idea seems a lot harder than what's in front of us. Let's think about it. Again, we've had black leadership. And when with the argument of, you know, and this is going into, and I'm sure we're going to cover it, you know, black women, let them have their lead, and I'm all for that. Right. But anybody, black woman, black man, if they have a white mentality, right, if they speak for white intentions and a white agenda, it don't matter how black they are, right? So I think the ideas and what Keon is saying, it scares people, because segregation to us was taught to be the illest thing, because it put us in a bind back then because we were attacked for being black. And I think what missed in the integration part was, wait, I don't care to mingle with y'all. I just want to be careful that when here in Sacramento, let's say it's an all-black city, I'm driving to San Francisco, I don't get harassed or I have to get killed or I can't sleep somewhere or eat someplace if I'm tired and I just want to get to another black city, LA, but I'm driving through San Francisco. You understand what I'm saying? I think that segregation part scares black people because we're so used to mixing with everybody except truly mixing and actually dealing with ourselves. And because we're governed by people for so long, it's just almost kind of like, you know, a baby continuing to want the baby bottle, because we've never allowed.
And then they
to
don't
bring it
want to be
off.
seen as racist.
And
then you don't want to be seen as racist.
And you don't want to be counterproductive in the dream that Martin Luther King was brought up. And that's why they preach Martin Luther King more than any other black leader. Because nonviolent, we all need to be together. So while everyone else is living the dream, black people continue to live this nightmare.
Yep.
And that's how they feed us, because integration was absolutely, probably the worst thing that could ever happen. Why? Because we stripped ourselves away from our own culture, our own ideas. Whatever we created, we try to develop ourselves in a system of white supremacy, thinking that now that they will accept us and they will be able, because we've got brutalized for so long. So I can't get mad at some of the ancestors, but the one thing about it is, why allow Walmart to get all your business when I already had a drugstore in the neighborhood, in the community? Why sell that? And then if I'm going to sell it, be like the business people of old. You know, I'm sure the people that sold Toys R Us, they probably plotting on something when they liquidated and went bankrupt. I guarantee you they're figuring out some way to get back into the game. You understand what I'm saying? We sold out everything and brought back nothing.
Nothing at all. And it's where we... and it's a lot that's true.
But it's just real.
It was true, but I was like, "Whoa, go ahead." That was real talk.
I mean, because it's a fact. Like, what are we investing in? What are we creating for ourselves, right? If I do have a business that starts popping a little bit, right, and I'm like, you know what? Okay, I got to put my energy somewhere else. I'm gonna sell it. Let me sell it to somebody who knows how to grow it. And with that money that I brought into it, now where am I buying something that makes that even more profitable for me, right? Where am I buying another industry that feeds into that? You know what I mean? How do we monopolize our own dollar and make sure that it's feeding into the next part of our own dollar, right? And not just dollar, I mean literally equity across the board. Because I think there's this other thing that we tend to do where we don't value what somebody's time and what their resources are. And we won't value it until, again, white people say, oh, that's a sign off on it, right? Barry can be out here giving education for real on how to build your own business, start your own program, hire your own, the whole nine, right? And you'll get 5 people out there. Now let a city councilman say, great job. Now let's make sure that we charge people $20 for it. Oh, well, I never got that resource in the first place. I mean, it's probably good. I'm going to go spend some money to go do it, but I never got a chance to get that. No, he did that for free for 5 years before it even got to this point, but you didn't value him at that point because you thought he was less than because he didn't have that stamp on it.
Somebody has a question for y'all. She basically saying, how do y'all put these thoughts into practice in the micro level, like in your home? And it's funny because you say that because I bank at a regular bank, but I also bank at a black bank. It's in LA, so I have to send my money. But because when they
You found a way. You found a way to
but
do
my
it.
thing is when I seen what's it, Killer Mike?
Yeah, Killer Mike, and he had
talk about
pushed
banking
on the
with your
heavy.
own, and even Charlamagne the God, they did like this push thing.
They did like for
I
months.
was like, okay, I'm not down with everything he says. He doesn't think he's funny, but I was like, I'm gonna be in there. I'm gonna put my money in the black bank. So this is more like a savings account because I'm pulling out to save money in there. But the point of it is, how many of us? Because to me, building what we're talking about is a part of that plan.
I make it part of our
family.
I think you got to do it on your everyday basis. So if we're talking about supporting black businesses, right? For instance, part of my job every day, I'm going to meet people. I'm going to have conversations with people. I don't want to keep going to Starbucks and giving them money. I want to go to Old Soul, which, hey, it's in a black neighborhood, but it ain't black owned. But I ain't going to get on that right now. But let me go to a black owned.
But it's Old Soul.
It's old, right? Exactly. It's branded.
Is it black owned?
No.
Oh, okay. I didn't
But
know.
That's what he says, in
It's
a black
old-
neighborhood.
but remember,
it's still
and-
called Old Soul.
Old Soul.
Exactly. So the branding and everything would make you feel like, but in reality, it's not. So what I
You just found this out?
Yeah, I didn't know. I thought Kevin Johnson still owned it from when he had his
No.
Nah, not at all.
So
Not
put
at
it
all.
into practice in your own home.
Right.
It starts with, I think, like even
So make your own
educating.
damn coffee at home.
But
It's very important to beat those things into their head, man, and let them see that all the time. The practices as well as the teachings.
absolutely, you got to make it part of your regular everything you do. You got to make sure that as I'm bringing people in here, I'm bringing other businesses in here that can help build this business, right? So if I'm talking to an artist, or whatever, and I'm in this restaurant where it's like, okay, they ain't really got nothing like popping on the decor side, but I got an artist who's like, damn, I love their food though. I'm gonna make sure that she's getting an opportunity to go ahead and put her stuff up on there.
Question now. How do we build the black agenda and what should be on it?
Education got to be one. Learn yourself. That has to be one of the major ones.
What What about education? Hold on, stop right there. Education. So we're talking about this black agenda. Why education?
Because you got to know.
We got a whole bunch of college.
Yeah. Well, the Negroes don't. Half of them Negroes don't even know themselves. I mean, it's what are they? They're programmed, and it's no fault of theirs. They're programmed to think and simulation. Like the kids at Sac High, what those people did to them was a form of simulation. Here are your rules. You will abide by them, and you will assimilate. We will take away the culture of you. We'll take away your pride, and we will give you what we feel benefits us more than you. And then you will assimilate, and you will think that it benefits you down the line. That's systematic. So education, taking away the education system from white supremacy helps us elevate what we want to be seen as what this black agenda is. And then the economic base.
Hold on. Education, hold on.
Education.
So education, we'll put that on the black agenda. But educate what? Like, what are we talking about? We talking about and learns about language.
Even that. It's as simple as language, right? We can go. So we look at the miseducation system that we're in right now. We're talking about re-education from your identity, knowledge of self, your language, your history, just everything you've been taught. Learn it under the scope of the African.
So here's the thing. I get you, Keon. I'm writing down. You said knowledge yourself. What else you say?
Knowledge of self. We said language, culture,
history.
Do for self.
Yeah. Creating your own business.
Hold on. Do for self. What else?
Creating your own. How to run your home. How to manage life.
Sustain your own.
And sustain your own. Okay, I just wanted to get it down because
some points under education.
Yeah, because I think with us, because that's what people come in and hijack our stuff. We start talking about education. Like tonight, they brought some people in from down south or whatever. They're probably good people, but I want some evidence-based proof stuff. I don't want to hear that you're an expert and you studied how messed up I am. That's not gonna help me. I need you send Jeffrey Canada in here with the Harlem Children. So what did he do? Somebody who has a track record. I'm so tired of people just throwing experts at black folks. I mean, hell, some of us are experts in just going to meetings. But a lot
of time that's to delay the process.
Barry, expand on that.
Think about it. When you constantly are talking about the problem and we're barely ever coming to some resolution, and here we're going to plan on the solution, right? It is a process that stops. We never really get to the work because we're so busy meeting and figuring out, well, this problem is a lot worse than we thought it was because we diagnosed it to be this, and now this expert from this place is saying it's that. We know what the issue is, right? Go ahead, put a black African-centered school in Meadowview, Valley High, put more support if it's going to be the fortune schools. Let's not have the fortune schools in these little pockets. Let's expound on those schools, and those schools that are no longer in existence because of whatever the SAC Unified or whatever district had to shut them down. Let's put the black centered schools in those places. So now they can have not only just academics, they can also have a world range of things, sports, mechanics, you got all the whole thing, and life skills.
And here's the other thing too: review it and make sure that we continue to make it better, because it's a learning process, right? Everything that we do is not going to be right the first time. And anybody who thinks that you can do something and it's perfect the first time, you're a fool. And I need you to get your life together, because the reality is you're going to have to get some review and you're going to have to learn from it and improve it each time. But we have to stay committed in that process. So the parents that are going through, having a faculty that can listen to what the parents are saying, but also other educators like, look, let me see what it is that we're actually doing here. When I say other black educators, let's not stray away from black at all.
Okay,
right.
So Danny just said Freedom School. Okay, got the room. Get to the next one. I want to say this though. We do have a few people who want to teach black students, in particular, it could be adults too, how to speak like a Yoruba or a Tree language from Africa. Yeah. See, we need to just go ahead and learn it. Yeah. Like we learn slang, so we can have some conversations.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing, and that's what empowers everyone else before us. Yep. What language do we have?
We don't have a language.
I'm Haitian, and I can't speak my dialect like I'm supposed to, because my parents, for whatever reason, wanted me to be assimilated and felt that it probably would have been not too good. I'm speaking all this Haitian, upsetting people around me. Well, to be honest with you, it kind of put me in a deficit. Right, that's the reality.
That's real talk,
You know,
right?
you're supposed to teach me this. I'm not supposed to, right?
Talk.
So we don't have our own set of language except the language that we created from our culture that we can, you know, conversate with each other on where they don't know what we're talking about.
That's
They
real
know
talk.
exactly what we're saying every dang time,
And they
it
make
hurts
sure
us.
that too.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it hurts us as well.
They used to cut our tongues off and talking, you know what I mean,
Yes,
your
sir,
original
did.
language,
Exactly.
things of that nature.
Yep.
So, and I think part of that. So when you look at the elders who try to wash your mother tongue, right? Part of it is assimilation, and part of it was their own fear that they inherited, right? So it's twofold to that. But yeah, like, you know, even like my grandmother, you know what I mean? God bless her, but she was so full of education. And so my grandmother, you know, at some point she came up under the like British, you know, colonies, you know, England had Jamaica, British colony, and then, you know, my mother was actually born in London. So at some point she ended up over there. And my grandmother's very proper, you know what I mean? But then I have some people in my family who wouldn't give two shits and don't talk nothing, like, you know, they're not trying to clean nothing up. So in certain ways it was preserved, but I see what you're saying. They actually would try to take it away from you to cause that assimilation. And again, that's where a lot of where we went wrong at. All the way around is trying to assimilate.
Okay, what's the next one?
What was the question? You
Black
said
agenda. So we got education. We got to spell
Economics.
Black agenda.
economics.
Okay, now how because Nick, we got enough economics. We're spending power in the world. But how do we get control this black economics? Because economics, the first word I come up with is control. To me, those two words ride together.
So that's why you
That's
said
just
education and economics, because with the education, you got to understand what to do with your dollars and your resources and where to put them, right? So when you said that it ties in hand, we said education, economics is, yes, that's true. But again, we are top, look, I forgot I was talking to the other day, one of the elders, they said the small percentage that we are, right? We still, even though we buying a bunch of bullshit, we still spending as much money as white folks who spend, they spend less, but they spend more money. Right, but I mean not more money, but they spend great amounts of money. Between us as Africans here in Sacramento, we're spending just as much money as them, if not more, on bullshit. So that's
Okay,
so that's about directing. Education is directing what we're gonna do and having an agenda to do with our.
Got you. So let's look at the Asians. So what I learned is that when I lived in Oakland, I lived over for 2 years. What was that? Maybe a year and a half. I'm sorry, that's the old one. What I learned is that the Asian people would go all the way over to Frisco to shop what they own before they shop with you until they was able to obtain their own Chinatown right there in Oakland, which they could cross the street however they like. You know, they cross like they don't go like this. But my thing is, how do we get black people to understand with their dollars they should wait to, you know, go to the African market to get certain things when it's on the 1st and 3rd, or, you know, of Saturdays, or do somebody has a former market? How do we, you know, go and shop with our dear brother who has it? How do we then to begin to pool our resources to be like, there's certain things, because I'm watching the Africans do it right now. I'm watching them do it right now. I can tell you how many Africans I've seen in the supermarket. I haven't seen many, but they have an African market right off over here with their stuff in it from their country that they sell.
I mean, a lot of the
Fish and
how,
everything.
I think a lot of the how is literally the modeling and bringing people along, right? So it's not just enough for me to say, oh, this is what I do and this is how I do it. It's, now let me show you what this actually looks and feels like. So where I can spend this dollar over here, I chose to spend it over here. And while I'm doing it, I'm doing these other things that help build it up. So if we want this experience, because me and my brother Barry, we had a chance to go to Chicago, right? We went to Chicago. We went to an area of Chicago where it was like black affluency to a degree, right?
Hyde Park.
Hyde Park. You know what I'm saying? It was a beautiful area, right?
Even though it's gentrified.
Super gentrified. Super gentrified. Reality. But the thing that we kept asking ourselves, why don't we expect this of ourselves, right? As we expect it, we have to build it up. How do we build it up? We have to get that feedback. We have to get that point. We have to get that information. Pride being one of the things that keeps us from listening as much. If somebody's giving us honest feedback like, yo, y'all are killing this right here. If you put this little touch on it, it might set you over the top. And then ask some other folks that you trust about that input. And if it works, try it out. If it doesn't, you can change it. But we'll get so much, you can't tell me how to do what I'm doing. Look, bro, chill out. Relax. It might be something that enhances it. But we get to this point of where we can't even take feedback in a sense, that we start cutting our legs off from the opportunities to really grow and have a shared experience that might even be more rich than what we had before. The ones who do, usually when we get our squad, right, we'll have our squad that can tell us something like, okay, you're right, because I know you're looking out for love, right? But we'll think that that love has to look a certain way before we can even receive it. But if somebody came in and broke bread with you and actually said, you know what, look, what you doing or whatever, I love this, and here's something else I would appreciate. can you take that and can you build upon that?
So if economics is on the black agenda, what about economics? What are we doing with it on the agenda? What are we supposed to do with that? Go ahead, Barry.
I feel like with that, economics is first of all learning how the dollar works.
Yes.
Right? Understanding the importance of investments, not just spending. Understanding how starting a small business can equate to a big franchise, and learning with that when we talk about collective economics, right? You know what I'm saying? We have to think about that collective group. How do we work in these silos, right? How, if I have an idea, but I might in principle not have the monies, how these two brothers and this one sister can be my investors. Don't necessarily have to be the people in the front. Don't even have to say your name, but understanding about playing that role to be able to create something bigger, and then we can kind of detract that. Now that you got your investment, you now can kind of invest into something else. Think that we missed the ball on how this the group economics works, and how we really honestly believe that there was just one rich person that came down from to create Little Saigon. Like, oh, here it was. One person told me, one of my Asian friends, as we were doing this Asian coalition with black people, when there was a lot of Asian and black violence going on because of the weed houses, right? He sat there and I talked to him for about an hour, and I said, so how did you start your market? He said, Barry, I didn't even speak this good of English when I first got here, because I wasn't allowed to get any job because of the language barrier. Because I asked him, why aren't there black people working right in your business? He's all, I had to be able to communicate to my people that we need to open up our own business. And I created this supermarket because I saw there was a need for as many people that was migrating here in Sacramento. And it's not that I don't want to hire black people, it's just the language barrier that kind of refuses that. And I can't dispute that. And then when I looked at that model, he said to me, with this supermarket, I have 3 kids that I pushed through college. And these ain't no punk colleges. You talking about Berkeley, talking about UC Davis, and all that. And I'm just looking at him, is if we love to imitate, mimic, and want to socialize in white supremacy and all these other cultures, why are we not mimicking how they do economics?
How they build.
Why are we not mimicking how they're building this base, this foundation? So to me, it's a degree of almost disrespect that we have individuals in these places in position of power that we consider black leadership, and their true agenda is not cultivating culture. And I know there's some people, like I know Alan Warren, he has his his new phase and development piece, but I will challenge the intentionality of that. And that's what I've sat there and I said, and a member of Bill Black got upset when I had challenged entertainer about some of the things that I feel entertainers should do. Because you can come over here and get the concert money, we can pay you $25,000, $10,000, and you're going back to your own neighborhood. Why is it that Negroes who come here and get money don't stop and say, thank you for the 10, I want to give back 2 to start up something here? We don't look at it like that. And this becomes the biggest thing for us, that the powers that be, the structures of people that have money, because there's a lot of Negroes that have money for us to not be in the position that we in. Economically, Negroes can make strip malls all day long. You got 1,000 King players that have come in and out of Sacramento and have not left a legacy. I'll give Chris Webber his opportunity. He tried. But then that's what comes with the economics. And when you tag it economics, support. If you don't have those two together, it never will work.
Give me 3 more for this black agenda. At least get 5 out of y'all.
I say unity.
Oh, that's too broad.
Well, no, we have to be able to unify. We was talking a second ago about the gays unifying under the fact that they gay, right? Within the diversity of whoever they are, within our own diversity, in order to have a nation, in order to have that, you have to be able to unify under something. So unity is definitely.
Hold on, Keon, because I just look. Economics is real. You can touch it, you can feel it. I deal with it every day.
Mm.
What was the other one?
Education.
Education, real. We all. I mean, I could be typing on this thing.
All right,
going
then. All right, then.
Unity
not
is like
even-
saying I want to live on utopia. Like
All right,
that's
then
not real. You got to give me something. Dig in there a little bit and pull something out of the unity bag that you think is obtainable.
Collaboration and
Because an
relationship.
agenda is
Well,
something.
you have to have
Collaboration
family. You
and
have to have
relationship,
family.
family.
You have to have family.
So family,
You
what?
have
Give
to
me
have
something of that family.
military.
No. You said family. Give me some. What about the family? Now that's a little.
Well, a
bit
family
family's real.
multiplied. A family multiplies a community, right?
Family. So is that family development or family? And what does that look like?
I think it is family development. I think that's a key word. That's a good word. And I don't mean to cut you off.
No,
like
go ahead.
that.
I'm trying to make it
Elaborate.
I'm saying family development in the sense of how are we developing healthy families where, you know what I'm saying, mom and pops or mom or wherever it is, mom and pops know how to rock together. They know how to bring up and pour into the next baby and whatnot. They know how to, if sis over here is struggling with hers or whatever, okay, come over here, let's make sure you lace up so mom can get back on her feet. You know what I'm saying? Like, how are we really modeling community and family? Like you said, family multiplied is community. So when we're talking to somebody that's in our tribe, am I actually looking out for your well-being overall? Like, if I see that I got you today and I can pick you up, okay, cool. But while I'm picking you up, I'm going to make sure I give you tools to make sure you can move and pick yourself
How
up.
will we roll that out in the Black agenda?
Literally with those who are doing it, teaching and educating how to do it. So, case in point, if we talk about there's a lack of strong relationships within young folks, right? They don't know how to stay in relationship. They don't know how to work through issues or whatever, right? But we got 15 couples that we could see been together since they were 15 years old, right? And they still under 40 years old, whatever, right? Why aren't they, what can they give to those who are going through those spots to actually learn how to navigate that space, right? And I'm not saying that marriage is for everybody.
No,
I'm
I
saying
get
that,
that.
like, where we're talking about the ways that and look at the ones who are raising up successful kids, right? If you see that this family, man, they figured out how to get their kids focused on what they want to build on. They're driven. They're good people overall and all that. What is it that you're doing with them? How can we learn that and implement that in our principles of that into our family structures? Like, we have to be able to teach each other how to do that, and it literally comes from looking at those who are doing it and being willing to step up. And say, hey,
So you
Healthy,
saying
strong families.
okay? So what are you saying? But are you saying strong families in the sense of mom, dad, or just strong families in the sense of a village of people that this young person or that person coming up can go to?
I'm saying both because I think it is going to be both at the reality, because not every family is going to have mom, dad, and everybody in there, right? And on the other side, it is going to be that village part of it. And even if you do have mom and dad, you still need that village to help raise that child or raise that family up. So I think it's both. So, like I said, you're one of the
A
best
house
fathers I've
divided
seen.
can't stand, right?
Reality.
A house divided can't stand. So again, that is the unification of Africans.
So with that family development, I'm trying to make it real tangible. Are we talking about housing? Because
Yeah,
it's
sure.
nothing worse than trying to keep a family together. Y'all have no place to live. You don't own your own home. Something that's tangible. Like, I think black folks need, Jay Bond says this all the time, we need federal protection. There's no way in hell that 7 out of 10 homes in California is owned by Asians. And you talking about
Right.
keeping your family together, but you don't even own where you sleep at every night.
Yeah.
That's a bit ridiculous.
And I think that just overall, I think that politics has to be something that has to be on the black agenda.
Okay.
We have to be a political power in a sense of, again, going back to the model of creating our own political party. I think that you cannot operate and contend. Families won't even be structured if we continue to sit there and think we're Democrats and Republicans. Because now we have a say-so into some of the family structure, because now we can get some of the housing. Because a lot of the times why families are dissipated nowadays in this new millennium is because who is going to be the provider? Right? You got mom working, you got dad working, and everyone's coming home stressed out. Mom might be making $14, dad might be making $12 because he's at the warehouse and he might have a felony. But think about if we have a political structure that is speaking to the volume of our needs, what we have to do, we now be able to kind of cater, because we know that there's a lot of black men and women that may have felonies and that might not be able to participate in certain things. We know that affordable housing is at the tip top of us to generally kind of create now more of a family structure. Now the family does not have to move out because the mother's on Section 8 and the father, he can't be there to help take care, and he got to come move the couch and things like that. And now it becomes more attainable for us to be able to save and afford now a house because we're sticking together. Politically, until we get educated politically and create a base of politics, I don't think that a lot of the things that we stretch, because we're so far away from all of these things that culturally before was so necessary, it's just kind of a backload now that we really have to go deeper into this new black agenda. I think a few years ago it was like family structure, but I think now it's like the idea of being political savvy is so more important to me in the idea of getting us to where we need to be. And that goes into our leadership. Because politics is going to be the direction to help black people regain what we've got stolen. I would love to see a political party of black people now going for reparations.
Right on.
You know what I mean?
I agree with that. So I think that fit right in. So I put the family development on there. I also put political power, creating your own political party. One more. That's 4 right there. Last one.
From the list I said earlier on, I could think industry and institution, right?
Which way?
Creating our own industries. That comes back, I guess, to economics. That comes back to economics.
Something else. I'm gonna venture to say we have to figure out how to repair our relationships with each other. And I don't know what that looked like. I don't know if that's mental. I hate the word trauma because we just use it.
I just need to catch word. Trauma.
God,
We all got trauma.
It's a
We
buzz.
all got
some way
trauma.
of like really honestly like how do we develop? I don't know what that is, but I think we need to.
Really it is. I think it really is. It's healthcare, but not in the white supremacist structure of what healthcare means. You know what I'm saying? Like that could be communal healthcare. Like how do we heal one another? How do we actually? But I think that's important too.
I'm gonna make it real simple though, because I believe in things that can be attainable.
Yeah.
I think us just learning to recognize each other. See, what I loved about the 70s, I'm a 70s baby. I remember clearly, even into the 80s. I remember people saying, "What up, Pete? What up, sis? What up, bro?" That changed the whole. I almost felt like I was with a person that knew me. Mm-hmm. Hey, sis. Oh, hey. You know what I mean? I think that is so basic. Not necessarily. No. Because I think unity is a big stretch. I'm just being honest. I think unity is like utopia. But I think it's just us greeting each other. See, I feel like if we just can't, it's kind of like back in the day when people just say hi. That mean they know it. There wasn't a unity. That's just called respect. Yeah. That's the bottom line. Like if we can put some respect back on the agenda, respect. No, if we can put that, I know what I do. Respect my name. No, but I feel like respect is when we just acknowledge each other. Don't mean we rocking together. I could be with my enemy who I'm not in unity with and still say hello and keep it pushing. I don't have to be like we enemies. You know, it's like, how you doing? That's nothing but pure recognizing. I think we suffer from not being recognized. That's just my personal opinion.
So
I don't know how we do that. I don't know what you would call that though.
I think that's a major dysfunction that we have.
Yeah. It's an intentional dysfunction.
I think that it's like I see my OGs, I see my my queens. Hey, I don't even. It's just sometimes we got to do too much dialogue. I throw the fist up. I see you. I remember I was just having a milkshake today by myself. Just doing some self care. Right, and I see my dude came through. With who's a lady who pulled out in the range, and I said, see you, brother. And gave me that same dap. And it wasn't like an envious thing. It was just like, brother, I see you. But I think that when you go to, I just got back to Philly, you know what I'm saying? And it's a different culture. Nigga get to saying you trying to do all that, they trying to think you trying to rob. So I think, like, what is this dude trying to, what is that? Like a sign that, I'm just saying. Because it's just different cultures, they ain't got time for that. Because you do it in different, climates, and folks ain't really even gravitating to that because we have such this hatred for each other that we don't see.
Connect back to ourselves, man. The ability to look at each other and see, the ability for me to look at you and see myself, the ability for you to look at me and see yourself. Those connections right there, I think, reconnect. We gotta reconnect with each other.
But how do we do that?
Yeah, it's just like an acknowledgement.
It's in practicing. It starts with a small conversation, like just an acknowledgement. Just
but here's the thing, Keith. How about if it's like, I'm like, what up? Or just like, and that cat just.
Well, because I get that a lot.
That's a chance to
that is, and I get that a lot.
I remember one day you called a lady mine. She's like, I'm not your mother.
Not your mother. all right, cool. All right, much love.
I've had people say like, Peace queen.
Yeah.
I ain't your queen.
Right?
Like,
I told you about that. Right?
Yeah.
You know? Yo,
That's a chance you take.
Okay,
It's a
all
chance.
of us ain't all of us, and I think the way the universe
Did you
works,
just say that?
like minds gonna connect. Yeah, like
Yeah,
minds.
This
Gonna
is
connect.
this
no, but you said no. You said all of us ain't
All of us ain't all of us.
I
Of
know,
course
I'm
not.
messing
Of course
with
not.
you.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I think we're different folks. I'm just
energy
gonna be
gonna find
honest.
itself. Energy gonna.
I agree.
You know, but you know, if we could, you know, unify, if the idealistically speaking, if it was just about skin color, you know what I mean? You look at that person with your skin and that's supposed to be you, that might be my ideology, that might not be yours. I might look at you and say, okay, that's my brother. You looking at me and be like, nigga, I fucking kill you. You know what I mean? or I got, you know, it might not be that, or it might be the other one, the whitewash nigga, you know what I mean?
No, I'm not saying unity is not possible,
It's that.
but I always try to look at things that are, see, to me, unity is not something that it can be on the agenda. It's just something that is or isn't. Like if we work them 5 things on there, then we'll be in unity.
I think.
But that's just, I mean, who we're in unity
Like-minded,
with.
well, that's what I said again.
Yeah,
Like-minded energy finds itself. Like-minded.
Because sometimes you have to do business with people that you hate.
Yeah, and
Let's
I
just
think
be honest.
I think we got to be honest too that with all of these things that we're talking about, there's going to be failures and successes with them, and we got to continue to push forward. Consistency I think consistency has to be one of those things. Consistency, because
I don't think that's
talking about-
consistency got to be put on the black agenda.
Well,
I think it's something that you have to move and operate in.
True, we do have to move, but that's what my point of it. Because at some point, other folks still got to catch on to it and be taught it, maybe, or shown it. Because the reality is, not everybody does it, and when we don't do it, that's where a lot of the distrust and all those things come in. The same thing that we talk about.
People, I think people do that. They do consistency in the sense of where they believe they're going to be consistent, and I go into that same sense of I just had to talk to some queens about Jim Cooper, like he's a black face with white intentions,
And he's consistently that way.
and he's consistently that way.
Exactly.
But because he's a black person, black people will try to vote for him. And because he's black, he will utilize his blackness to get a black vote.
Uneducated black people who don't know. That come back to the education piece, just being informed. Like get hip to the time. I think African black people is some of the only people who the world is spinning and motherfuckers don't know what's going on around them. You got a handful of people who know what's up, and then you got the majority. I would say and it has to be the majority because if it was the other way around, we'd be a lot more further than we are.
I
The majority of
don't
black
think
people
that they know
don't
what's going on.
up.
I think they bought into their idea of what's acceptable to them.
And then on top of that,
That's what I think.
But then they really don't know what's going on.
Yeah,
That's just
No,
saying
but
you don't know
for
what's
you,
going on.
for you,
he may go on what's going on, but at the same
Right.
time, this goes into the idea of being okay with how things are and how things operate. Because once you are not okay with it, then you're going to push through some pressure and pushback. Because I've not heard not one black leader or whoever besides that are radical that have said to pushback of Jim Cooper. He just comes in here, he puts his little things up, and it's like
Nobody says nothing.
No one says anything.
Crazy. It's crazy.
but that also goes back to, Bear, I'm glad you brought that up, how we, and I'm just saying, well, not some of us, not saying beyond me, but some of us, we have this thing where we protect the black man even when he's a predator. Even when he does things that's at the demise of who we are, we still gonna make a place for him and be like, well, he's a black man, he struggles. Like, all black men ain't struggling like that. He probably put more brothers in jail when he was a cop. No, honestly.
No, he did.
Man, no,
I
I'm
know
dead
Fury
serious.
put that.
I'm just saying.
I don't like
But
that.
yet he gets the banner like Obama of being a black man, and we protect him even though he.
Yeah, why are we
comes
like?
first.
It's just like I don't understand the simple fact that it was
do
a
it,
real,
yeah,
it was a
don't
real
do it.
awkward, it was a real awkward moment. I was doing something with another brother. We collaborated, but the brother was trying to undercut me, and we had to go into he was like, "Yo, brother, I know how you feel about different things, but I want the kids just to meet Cooper," and I'm like, "I don't know about that, brother." That was like in 2016, and I was like, "All right, whatever, let the kids do what they did," because he had donated some money for the program, right? No money I saw, right? Let's keep that money. And but even in that standpoint, it was like he was saying his jargon in his conversation, and I was just looking at this brother. It was like, dang, I know that if it was them, it was his life or these young brothers' life, he'd choose his life. You know what I'm saying? And that thing to me is something that I can't sit with, because if it's my life or their life, I'm gonna let the young people live before me. Right? And that mentality is some of the leadership that we don't have. And I think that it's a scary thing that, again, people know this guy's resume. This guy has not done anything outside of continuing to support white supremacy, outside of continuing to support people like Scott Jones. He said when you have all these things happening in the black community and you never hear black leadership ever do a press conference or ever do something that says something to make us galvanize in the leadership, not a press conference where it's a whole mass of leaders and everyone got called, hey, guess what, we got to do this today. Okay. I'm saying really galvanize the community to speak on real issues. None of these black leaders here really do that. It took one black leader to really step up and say, I will take away my support of Ann Schubert, right? And the others just kind of sit there and be like, well, let's just hope this thing passes. To me, that speaks of a lot of volume onto what we're looking at. But for the people, for the black people, as my brother Keon said, that can go and spend massive amount of money to create and help stabilize white supremacy, how do we not come out into the polls? How do we not oust these people that do not have our good intentions? They have white intentions. That, to me, all in all, is a kind of a wow moment.
No, I agree with you, but I also believe some of us believe in the illusion of inclusion. They want the black kids to know you could run for office and one day be elected. I know we push that line. We want you to have a suit and tie. We want you to be in that Oval Office, even though when you were there, you gave black folks absolutely nothing. I don't care what nobody say. At least the black folks I belong to.
My opinion is, while we don't have our own, we do want to raise our own to infiltrate in these positions. But we want them to go in there and keep that black mind. We want them to know who they are while they in these institutions, in these positions, and bring it home, right? Because again, we need our own of everything. And while we at a 500-year deficit, right? I could have my own building. I get my own building, but guess what? I'm still buying the brick from the white man. I'm still buying the you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
He got
So when I cement and all that shit, right? So that's what I'm saying. We don't have industry and institution. I can get my own, but I'm still coming to them at some level.
Because you don't believe in yourself.
That's my point. So we take that. So that's what we say. We need to take our children and the institution that do exist. I'm not saying
See, let me be honest with y'all. I'm glad I got y'all 3 here.
When we go in there and we learn that shit, we bring it back home.
I got y'all 3 here. So for instance, I'm dealing with some people right now, mothers with their sons who are really struggling, and me and a couple of other women, we were talking today. We saying, I said, we can't even refer these young men to any of the men we really know who run men programs because y'all not consistent. Y'all just not consistent. And so what do we do with that? Do we blame the white man? Hell no. What do we do when in our communities we have a bunch of black men who, some, not all, who be in their feelings, but we can't even refer our sons? Because when we gonna do what we can do? I've had mothers say, I don't know what to do with my son. He's out of control. And not to mention that she probably did this and stuff. I get it. But the real fact of what's going on with this young man is that his father is not in his life. There's no male. Like back in the days, you had the old man down the street or somebody in the corner. You don't even have that anymore where we are in Sacramento. But the sad fact that we can't even refer them to men who run programs for young males because they're so inconsistent.
We gotta do better. That's the bottom line.
Oh hell no, that's not gonna be enough.
You don't hear that?
I don't want to hear that shit. I can't.
So then there's no answer.
There's got to be an answer.
I mean,
no.
Talk to me.
Go ahead, brother.
No, because that was my answer. I said we gotta do better. She said that ain't it. So.
I can't.
No, I think that, but I mean, in reality, there are programs, like I know I'm consistent, like a motherfucker. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I need the parent to be consistent. You know what I'm saying? And when you have that, because when I've had equal consistency from parent,
I get you.
With me equals success. And then when it comes down to it, we don't even need the parent to be in the fold. But the bottom line is there are programs that are very much consistent on what it is and what it needs to be. Because I know my lane. I know where I need to be. And I know how to move and navigate. But a lot of people don't know their lane. And at the same time, the support that brothers and sisters get in these programs is limited. So you also have to understand, sometimes in the act of wanting to serve our community, it feels good, it sounds good, but when it gets down to the get down, if you're not able to hustle, the only reason why I think that I have maintained 10 years of activity with mentorship with my Voice of the Youth program is because I spent 25 years of hustling on the streets of figuring it out and doing it to be able to survive to where now within the 10 years, the fourth, like coming down to like the last 4 years, I've been really able to flourish in such a way to where I'm not looking like, damn, I gotta go ahead and maybe work at some other organization by my size myself and do something outside. Because honestly, it takes money to be fluent in the work that we have to do.
Right.
These kids want what? They want food. You can't sit there. They want to be entertained. It takes gas to pick them up. You can't just have kids just sitting around here in your office space. And the office space takes what? Takes money. So when you have people that are in leadership that are not cycling dollars to support those that have consistent programming, and programming that's not as big but maybe smaller, because in my senses, I've always looked at small size numbers would be the best result for me. I'm not going to go take 200 kids per like summer and try to work it. I'm going to go ahead and take these 25, 30 kids and work them all through the line to make a bigger impact. That's just my thing. And on top of that, my overhead costs won't be as high to where I'm not sitting here cutting off employees. I might have to look at 2 or 3 people and say, hey, you know what? This is what your mission is. Let's go ahead and execute it, and I'll be able to eat, and you'll be able to eat.
So that I get. Now, I get that from a program. I'm talking about that every day. When you can't have someone that you can send somebody, just talk to them, brother. I always get people sending their kids to me. Could you talk about daughter? Well, yeah, shit. I mean, I don't have time, but bring her in here because I can't miss the opportunity to at least share my voice with her, because sometimes that's may all she be able to hear, me listen to her, whatever. There is something in our community when it comes to men being accountable to younger men. Mm-hmm. That's an issue. Mm-hmm. That's an issue.
Well, even in the sense of, okay, now we talking about programming, we talking about like daily activities.
It could be both. So he just gave the rebuttal for programs, and I'll take that.
So then in daily
but for
activities,
individual men, no.
Individual, then it's about reaching out to those that you see, you know, on a daily active. If you talk about consistency in that, well then, you know, that don't stop on my end. I deal with young black men on a daily. Whether it be, you know, references, whether it be in my neighborhood, whether it be shit. When Ryan was younger, Ryan used to come, you know what I mean? So in that instance right there.
So why do we have this high suspension rate? Why do we, because I work for SCOE, why do we have young men fooling up in the community schools? Why do we have so many young black men in jail and in prison, in juvenile hall? Why is there so many of us? I don't want to hear about the system. Yeah. I just realized we have not, some of us have not been on the post. I'm not talking about the field, because it seemed like everybody wants to be a rapper, everybody wants to be the spokesperson on the mic. That's what it feels like. But when you're talking about, you see a young man that you know is struggling, that you see every day, or you consistently seeing him every day. How you doing, young blood? You send him just text me, hey, bro, whatever it is. That's missing when we're talking about black men, and not all black men, but I'm just saying, usually Negroes in the suit and tie want him to come with his pants up. Well, he ain't got his pants up. Shit. You got to work with him till he gets to that.
Is the repair work, because the reality is it's more that are in need of that help than it is that can provide that help. So, you know what I'm saying?
What is repair work? I've never heard of that term.
So, that repair work, that restoration work, right? The same thing that these brothers have been doing, but it's like, it's a process, right? Because they're doing it to the youngsters who are going to get older, right? But there's that generation of our own age, right? I can point to 25 dudes who just, they're on the wrong side of whatever, right? And even we're, coming up, trying to be that voice to them, yo, bro, we got to do it a different way. They chose to go the way they did or whatever, right? And now they might be at a point or an age where it's like, okay, I do want to do it different, but I don't know how. Okay, well, let's start getting you repaired so you can start doing that. You know what I mean? Like,
I got to tell you this. I talked to some men in the North here that I have a lot of respect for, and when I posed this question to them, you know what they said? This is why I love honesty. Mm-hmm. It's not that we got to do better, no disrespect, or they was like, I want to do that, but I really don't know how, because I haven't had a lot of practice at myself. I know I can impact somebody, but I don't really know what consistency look like, because I didn't grow up with it, and I'm from the street, but I do know I want to work with some young men, but I don't know how to do it. I'm not saying I'm going to teach them. I'm not going to front, because I don't know if women do a good job of that, to be very honest with you. But I feel like I can respect the man if he said, sis, I hear you. I think we're trying to increase our stuff, but we struggle with that area.
I think that we have to also think in hindsight, leading by example. What do you want to see for that young man? So when I can't get a hold of that young brother or young sister, they will see me in a light to where that, okay, he's a great example of what I'm trying to get to or gravitate to. My father didn't do too much speaking to me. My father did one thing that I always will resonate in my mind. He showed me the greatest example of how to be a man. And sometimes the living proof of just being that example in the household. So with me, I always want to try to create that impact by being consistent in some kind of capacity, right? You know, I might not be able to make it to every ball game, but I'm going to sit there and ask her, hey, how was your game? I might not be able to you know, go to every, you know, recital or every back to school night, but I'm going to check in. The one thing about it, I think sometimes we want to blame that we're inconsistent because we're inconsistent with our own self, with other things that we need to do. So I think sometimes brothers want to shift the blame of, you know, I don't know how to be consistent because I'm not consistent in my own life, because I find myself saying I'm going to go to the gym and I never go to the gym. Because we have the tools of social media, it's so easy for us to, on a daily, get in touch with these kids. And we know that these kids sometimes need us on the physical, but then that's when, if you can't go ahead and cipher with one as an individual because you don't have that much time, that's when you collectively go ahead and think about the most inexpensive thing to do is like, hey, you know what, let's go get some pizza and round robin and get them all. And you would be surprised how many kids, like this summer, it's just picking these kids up and just going to Jamba Juice. You know what I'm saying? Going to 7-Eleven and getting a 99-cent Slurpee and just sitting down rapping with them, chopping it up. And to be that right there is some of the biggest things that will change and elevate. And we talk about leadership. That's the leadership that we are looking for with our young kids, especially our black males. So for the women and the parents, are you ready to be consistent? Because you do have brothers in here that are ready to be consistent with your children.
And necessarily not even taking pictures and broadcasting, but if that's what you do, you do it. You know what I mean? If that's what you do in your daily life, then you do that. You know what I mean? And the consistency, like, you know, the change will show up. You know what I mean? The babies, they are watching and they are listening. They're listening, they're watching. And you know, just being sincere in our efforts. Being very sincere in your efforts, and that'll get us the change that we want to see. Like you said, if it's not a large group, you want a one-on-one. You know what I mean? Some people do better with one-on-ones
than they do with a large group.
Some people do better with groups than one-on-ones. So.
All right, tell me y'all wrap up. This is a wrap-up question. Black leadership, where are we? What's your final thoughts on it? Keon, we start with you.
No, come back to me.
All right, you going second. Who's going next?
Man, where are we? I think we're at a pivotal transition point. We have young emerging black leaders that are fully committed to it, not backing down, fearless about it, and still need support, not only from those behind but those ahead too. I think we're at a point where the teaching and growing and developing of leadership is so critical because it's a bridging generation that we're in, right? Because there's some youngsters who, like Brother Barry was talking about earlier, where, you know what I'm saying, they feel like you can't tell me nothing about it, right? But there's still a connection that we hold with that generation, right? That generation before us can't do. And there's some things that generation before us has to learn and understand that, y'all did a lot of good stuff too. I'm not gonna take everything off the plate, but there's a lot of things that what y'all did, they ain't feeling, I ain't even feeling. So I'm gonna need y'all to follow in a sense, right? And just give us that wisdom piece of, okay, watch out for this, look out for that, and let it ride, right? I think it's a point where we have to be intentional about what we're giving to the next in line, and also hearing and taking back from the next in line too. Because I'm sorry, even a wise man can learn from a baby. So the moment you think that you got it all figured out, you ain't learning no more, I don't need you in leadership. I need you to step away. It's time for you to sit down and let somebody else lead.
Where are we with black leadership? Nationally, locally, what do you mean?
Whatever it is in your mind.
I think we've got a far ways to go. But at the same token, I think what we are looking for, in the journey that we've been sojourning for so long, I think that what we're looking for can change overnight with collective mind, with collective thinking, collective actions. I believe that once, again, I don't know, you omitted the unity, but I do believe in African unity. And once the Africans unite here, the change that we are seeking, we can see it overnight. We are the most powerful beings on this planet, and across the planet, man. You know, if you look at Africans in America, I would say, you know, even the lowest of the lowest of us here have it better than a lot of people across the globe. I think it's to come to a point where we have to realize who we are, the advantages that we do have, and take that and set model. Idealistically, I think we build here in America. We take that down over to Haiti and we offer our services to our brothers and sisters in Haiti, because I call Haiti Africa West, as it being the only free establishment over here. Haiti's Africa West. But just for us, take stock of what we have, take stock of our resources, do something with it, and go help others. Like I said, here, take it down to Haiti. How can we help and go build infrastructure there? From Haiti, we go to the other Africa West, in South America, where the largest populations of Africans outside the continent, and then we can return to the continent there. That's neither here nor there. That's just my idealistic thinking. But I think we just have to really take stock of what we do have here, because as shitty as it is, life in America, it could be worse. We could be somewhere else. Check out the powers that we do have and build there. People are leaders in their own rights. Follow your heart. You know what's right. Again, leaders do emerge. That's pretty much it.
I think that we're at a crossroads where we have to make a decision on how intentional we really want to be in this moment. And when I say that, the intentionality of us deciding how far are we willing to go as black leaders to liberate our people and truly liberate. Not liberate in a sense of, I got mine, you go figure out how you get yours, but in a sense where we liberate, what Ryan and Keon are saying are so key, especially when we think about black people in leadership. I think that one major thing that kills us here in America and makes other people flourish from other countries, that they still have a base and they still have a country to go ahead to submit to, right? These people are coming and creating their little Saigon because they've seen Saigon in the country that they were in. They've seen it. They can import, they can export, they can trade. They have industries, And when I say the intentionality is, how deep are we willing to go to be liberated? Are we willing to separate politically? Are we willing to separate education-wise? Are we willing to start being confrontational about certain things that we feel should only be black? How unapologetic do we want to be when talking black? When we're in places and spaces where we're feeling, folks will feel awkward about our blackness, that we're allowing that awkwardness to set in and we're not apologizing for it. We're setting precedents on, I am a black man, I am a black woman in leadership. Though I serve all, my people come first. And when we come into that idea of truly liberating, instead of crucifying those who've liberated in the past and crucifying those who may not do it in the route that they may deem to be professional or they may deem to be the right way we're supposed to do it, because I don't think truly until we start connecting with the countries that have our people to where we can start doing our direct trades, not going through third or fourth people. How is it that there's a whole bunch of Asian people in Africa and there's a bunch of black people that we're visiting, but we're not figuring out trying to set businesses and set corporations and industries? Yeah, we don't need to go in there just to hang out to see. I was jumping on some elephants and I was in I saw some temples and some all these things. We need to go in there and really start being intentional on how we set it up to bring more and more and start lifting and building. And until we really get to that point, I think the leadership will always be in a standstill, because it will always say an idea, this is what we should do, but we'll always practice the things that white supremacy wants you to do. And we have to get into the idea of what we should do. And every black person really, truly, if you're in leadership, knows that black people have to build black.
Real talk. Well, look here, family. This was a great conversation. I posted 2 questions. One was, what components make up a nation? That was kind of like, what's the black agenda in another step? Because it fell right in line with that. Most people said education. Somebody said the military. Somebody says education, politics, social capital, spirituality. A lot of education and economics were probably the top two. Up there, somebody said culture. Somebody said we need family unity and economics again. So we have more of that. So that's that. Also, the last question was, are Black Americans capable of creating their own, like other groups, stores, banks, etc.? And basically everybody said yes. Yes, yes. Either there was something behind, like, you know. So I know that we believe that we're capable. We just have to now put that into practice. So it's one thing to say yes, it's one thing to say yes, I agree, but everybody say, well, who gonna go be down to do it? That's when the room get empty.
That's about sacrificing. That's what we talk about investing. That's what we talk about putting others before yourself. You know,
even if it means, because somebody had a comment in here that said, if you at home with your family, you should bring that dollars into your family. Most of us do that, but we're not known for that. You know, most households, 70% of them are headed by a single person, so that's kind of not cool.
And I think that sometimes when we talk about Black leadership, we talk about our own household, and whether it's you know, a single family household or, you know, extended family household, like, you have to want to make sure that your offspring is getting the best of everything, because when your offspring is getting the best of everything, the power you can get when you guys are building together, it makes me smile every day that I've set my daughter up to where she can help me out and help our business, which in turn helps her business. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's self-sustaining. That's what self-sufficiency and self-sustaining is.
Thank you, family.
Peace.
Bless.